think the first memory is really these strange news reports from China out of Wuhan, which all of a sudden we knew there was a city called Wuhan. But I think, where it became apparent that this is a big deal is probably my wife was running a restaurant at the time here in Whitehorse, and March 17th, I believe. So it was right after the weekend where everything changed, but restaurants were still allowed to be open. And March 17th was the last day that she was open. And what she described that night to be like at the restaurant was absolutely heartbreaking and extraordinary. People basically came to eat to support the business. It wasn't so much about going out and having a good time. There were all kinds of takeout orders. People were ordering, but they were really like, nobody wanted to touch anything all of a sudden. Like it was just this, people really well, but this level of trust just was gone all of a sudden. So I think that's probably, that's really the moment where, notwithstanding the cancellation of the Arctic Winter Games, that was, sort of the newsworthy moment of the prior week. But that really is the indelible moment for me, where you're just realizing how big a deal this is going to be.
Hi, I'm Kari, host of the Yukon Entrepreneur Podcast series, and this is a documentary all about how Yukon business owners adapted to the COVID-19 pandemic. The podcast series began April 2nd, 2020, just days after the Yukon had declared a state of emergency. And as Inga related in that first clip, we were all pretty disoriented, just trying to figure out what to do next. So I started recording interviews with Yukon entrepreneurs to hear about how they were adapting, coping, and finding hope. And as the reality of the pandemic unfolded, we got to listen in as Yukoners told their stories. Stories about hardship, community, collaboration, courage, and challenge in the face of tremendous adversity. Part research project, part time capsule, part coaching and therapy, the Yukon Entrepreneur Podcast series had 2 seasons and recorded 57 interviews starting April 2020 and ending August 2022, all of which were published in real time on YouTube, social media, and podcast feeds. You can read all about it and find our written report at yukonentrepreneur.com. And so we have 4 key insights that we'd like to share from this project that we think are important to highlight to build resilience to future pandemics and other disruptive events. And they are: 1, the value of community, both customers and with fellow business owners. 2, support for and the ability to efficiently learn about and integrate new business practices. 3, financial support from federal and territorial governments to maintain cash flow during lockdown. And 4, clear, relatable, logical, and timely communication and support to implement health and safety measures. But enough of me talking. The whole point of the series was to hear directly from Yukon entrepreneurs. And so we've organized the findings into 6 key themes. 1, impact on businesses. 2, new opportunities. 3, operational changes to businesses. 4, policies or programs that were useful or not. 5, relationships with customers and clients. And 6, strategic changes for businesses. I just want to extend my gratitude to all the business owners who shared their stories, and I encourage you to watch or listen to the full interviews at yukonentrepreneur.com.
Early March, we were getting reports, and I think by March 17th, we got shut down, and travel stopped. We had to lay off guides that were doing our winter tours. And the world just kind of slowed down, came to a screeching halt. So it was a big thing for us. And it was hard.
We were just getting ready to host Arctic Winter Games, which was is a huge sport tourism sector event. And that caused a lot of turmoil in terms of cancellations. We were booked throughout the games to host several opportunities with great revenue. And when the games announced that they're not happening, it was a very domino effect, not just for myself. I don't ever think of myself. I think of accommodations. I think of airlines. I think everything to do. There's tourism weaves throughout the Yukon deeply. And so that was a real eye opener. And then the second, it was really hard to just answer that one. And then the second was when cancellations started happening and all you were doing was handing back money. And that money, that was just like, wow, okay. And then the phone stopped ringing. There was no phone calls, no texts, no emails, complete dead.
Because of COVID, everything is closed for 2020. Of course, we just made an announcement that we will be postponing Attica Cultural Festival this year, which is really sad because our team has been really working hard.
The primary group of people that have been supplying these meals to our doctors and nurses. So keeping within the respective rules of physical engagement and essentially just doing like a drop and dash delivery service. So everything's prepaid for. I bag everything up. I take precautions within my own space here that I'm doing everything within my best ability to stay clean, sanitary, and healthy, right? I don't have just people walking in here, and I'm pretty careful with that. So, they have that confidence in me that they're getting something that they don't have to worry about.
Part where I had to close my doors and sales stopped. That was pretty hard to miss, that message. And so I think like most of the retailers downtown, when we, especially those of us in the Horwoods Mall, when we decided to close our gates, electively close our gates because we knew it was the right thing to do. None of us were mandated to close.
I need to shut down my clinic on Monday. I need to email all the clients who were scheduled. I need to change my website. I need to change my booking site. I need to find a way to see people through telehealth. Like all these things were just kind of like steps that in my mind were like, okay, I need to get to a point where I can still serve people. That's where my mind went. It's interesting. For me, it was not about how can I still survive financially? Like it was all about how can I still serve my people? Because I thought of all my pregnant women who probably felt, very lonely. I knew that the prenatal classes had all been canceled, that they didn't have access to any information. And they were probably like, oh my God, I'm delivering a baby in a couple of weeks. How will I get prepared? And for me, it was like, how can I still see these people either online or, developing an online course or whatever.
The changes came quickly. I think the biggest thing that I did was limiting the customers in the store. So we never get chaotic now. And it's difficult for me to ask my customers to line up outside the front of the store. But, when I go out there and I talk to the lineups of people out there, and the lines aren't long, it might be 5-minute wait at longest, but they're happy with it. And I tell them they'll appreciate it when they get in the store, and certainly that my staff appreciate it. If they weren't outside lining up, then I probably wouldn't have any staff. So, we got to control that. So that feels good.
We're considered critical workers. So that's a little bit different from an essential worker. We actually have more quote unquote freedoms than an essential worker does. So, we're actually able to go to work if we're not feeling good. We are able to enter the territory from outside, let's say from Alberta or from somewhere else where there's isolation requirements, and we actually don't have to isolate. We can go to work. So that's, of course, sort of the nice part about that is obviously we can continue to go to work and operate. The downside to that is, of course, you'll have staff that are concerned about each other. Let's say if somebody's been traveling and they return back, are they infected? Are they not infected? Are they sick? Are they not sick? These are things you have to deal with. So, for us, our team has always been very, very close. Everyone works with each other. Nobody really works in their own little silos. So for us, in our office physically, just being able to have everybody separated enough so that's less of a concern. making sure that everybody understands and follows all the safety precautions. That's hand sanitizer, masks, all that kind of thing.
So I started my YouTube channel in parallel of my online programs I was building. So that was kind of the start of the pandemic. You were asking, like, has it started in a pandemic? So at first it was like, how can I still serve my clients while I'm not in the clinic, was kind of the first intention. But then suddenly I had like someone in Ontario who had heard I had an online class. And so she was like, oh, can I buy this class too? So I was like, sure. And so I had like people from like other places in Canada who wanted to purchase my class. So then suddenly I was like, oh, now I'm exportable. Suddenly my knowledge is exportable. I can teach women from all over the world. There's no limit from now on. So it's just more recently that I started having more that thinking of expanding myself, or like my business, more outside of the Yukon.
One time I wanted to be the biggest, largest tour company with, of course, our various divisions, and offer, our day tours to our multi-tours, to now kind of moving into more transport, host services. I'm going to probably still be a boutique tour company. We have found a very nice niche market, and we seem to have found a really great place. And yeah, you don't have to be the biggest, greatest. And I don't want Yukon to be that. One of your things that you're going to ask me down the road about aha moments and things like that is, what's going to happen now is this word called over-tourism. We have all been cooped up for so long. Travel it's a privilege, but it's also a necessity, and is becoming a need for people's mental wellness. For people, I think people are going to value their families. They've had time to reflect, and now they need to get the frick out. And so people are going to be anxious to book, travel. Companies are changing, and I worry about our capacity because so much of our industry is understaffed right now. And it's not just me. I'm talking hotels, restaurant, anyone is understaffed. And so there's a potential for burnout, but there's also an opportunity to look and go, who do we really want to be when we grow up post-pandemic?
There is this opportunity that exists. It's a weird time in the world. It's COVID, and I chose to take a lot of risk. And I spent 6 months, took 6 months off, said no to everything, and trained a team of up and coming kind of young adults in the territory who were interested in this field. Because I saw the potential. Like, I think I did see that eventually, once COVID, calmed down, like there would be a time of flourishment for everybody, but digital specifically is just the time. So after 6 months, these 4 interns are now employed, and like we are doing things that Outpost has never thought about doing.
The great thing about Yukon is the galleries there are, everyone's so great. Everyone's so nice. The doors are always open. And I think there could be potential there. And I've noticed, despite things going online, there's been a lot more opportunity for artists, I find. There's a lot of grant money out there, either through Yukon or through the federal government, specifically to help artists during times of COVID, to create work. Like, this is a good time to create. You might not be exhibiting yet, but this is a really good time to focus on your practice and really hone in on all of those skills, both as a curator and as an artist.
What I'm pivoting to is targeting a global audience. And so I've been spending the last several weeks working on a PR strategy that has me working in tandem with bloggers, with the big fashion magazines, direct to celebrity promotions, things like that are going to bring the product to a bigger audience beyond the territory. The territory has been so incredibly supportive of what we're doing, and we definitely want to keep serving that really loyal customer base. But we also know that the plans that we have for this business are big, and we want to be able to not just buy some Indigenous sourced fur. We want to buy all of the indigenous sourced fur. And so if we're taking in that quantity of material, we need to be producing a greater volume of finished goods and employing indigenous people. And so if that's what we're planning to do, then we need to have a bigger base of people to sell it to.
We talked about this in the first round, that business would move to online. And most of us were pretty rusty about it. The interfaces of meeting remotely were a lot of apology for the technical and people moving their mouse around and trying to figure that out. Well, now we're opening chat rooms and doing surveys on the posts, and there's 5 or 6 different platforms that you can do this stuff in and share. The future of work generally is completely morphed. And as it relates to my business, I too believe that those that are working in the knowledge sector, whereby I work from home or I can have an office, but my clients can be anywhere in the world. That has just become more accessible, more commonplace. The idea of needing to be in person, don't get me wrong, as an extrovert and a people person, I would always prefer and choose the in-person. But not only is this facility faster and efficient, meetings are more focused, and you save a ton of costs in third-party disbursement, hotels, gas, food, etc. The downside of that is those that were selling hotels, gas, and food and venues have to reinvent themselves.
I've had a lot of different challenges, all kinds of different things that, you get thrown curveballs often. But, this one was day after day and hour after hour, and progressively for about 2 weeks, it got worse and worse. So one of the things is the integrity that you have. I think that, we're a strong leadership team in the store. We really banded together. We've changed our roles. It's interesting, not speaking for myself in particular, but with my staff, Kari, my managers, when I'm asking them to do different things, you run the deli, but we shut half of it down. So now you're actually overseeing half of the store or the total store at some hours, or you might be locking it at the end of the night, or unloading trucks, or all kinds of different things that all my different department managers are doing today that they hadn't done in the past.
What we really been focusing on is, with the huge loss of business with the restaurant industry and with the supply chain being so overwhelmed so quickly, is like, well, we have a warehouse of food. How do we get that to the communities and the people? And well, we can't have people coming into the storefront or into the business. Can we provide them with a safe way to pick up groceries at the back door? The biggest thought behind that was okay, well, people are in isolation. They can go for a car ride. They can come pick up. Can we make it safe for them to get out of their house and get a little time outside, pick up their order? I'm sure they'd appreciate that. And it actually just blew up once we put that idea together and how we could work it out.
One of the conversations was just about, planning to get through, but also planning for recovery mode. So really trying to think like, okay, how do I get through these next few months, 6 months when shops are closed, but also ramping up, because when things get back to the new normal and life opens and we're allowed to shop and go out and support and feel alive again, what does that mean for my business and how much will it change? So making sure that I have inventory to supply to all of those shops, making sure that I'm ready production-wise, mentally, all of that. And so, you're kind of planning for 2 different things at the same time.
We were going like full on, just crazy busy. And then they just stopped because we couldn't meet, And so basically, eventually that evolved into, we started doing our workshops over Zoom, which is a huge adjustment as well, because so much of, having a good workshop is engagement and, being able to really, interact and all of that. So we've had to learn how to adjust and do this over Zoom, which we have successfully been able to do, which is amazing. You know, I mean, I'm not going to lie, they are definitely better in person, but we've managed to figure out how to do it over Zoom. And so there's that. And then eventually we were able to open up to smaller workshops with just 10 people, 6 feet apart, you know, following the rules, sanitizing and you know, not touching the same microphone and things like that. So it's just been an adjustment, you know, to following the safety rules and just figuring out how can we do this and keep doing it, because people still want it. The demand is still there.
I think it's wonderful the way that our community came together and came up with the Business Advisory Council. And there's been so many wonderful supports for entrepreneurs with different subcommittees and committees. And it's been absolutely amazing to see how the business community has pulled together. People before that used to be, you know, maybe competitors and didn't really have relationships. Well, now they're holding each other up and they're making those connections, and it's wonderful.
We got a call on a Friday afternoon from Carly at Candor and said, I'm giving you guys the weekend to essentially develop a program that is going to serve businesses, small businesses during this crazy time. No one knows what's going on, but we've got to figure out something to create a space to hold for them. So we created this program called Pivot.
I did the Pivot program. And then there was an ECDEV one as well. Most of the funds I didn't qualify for because I wasn't operating at a loss. So I was experiencing a real smack to the revenue, but I was still making sales and still in business. Lights were on, doors were open. So I wasn't doing badly enough to qualify for funding, even though funding would have been really helpful. So I did Pivot, I did the Business Relief Fund, and then in last fall, I applied for Incubate North, which isn't like a pandemic related program, but I applied to that and I got into that one as well. So that's been really, all 3 of those have been really important, if for no reason other than to just give me something to focus on. Because with Pivot, it was project focused, and same with Incubate North, they're project focused. So even when things are starting to drag, or if it's feeling a bit bleak, or if we're kind of, you know, just still kind of bearing the burden of the social fatigue, it's giving me a really productive distraction. I'm task driven. I have outcomes to try and achieve. I have accountability. I have meetings, you know, so it's just keeping the momentum, keeping the pace, keeping me moving forward, even though some days I would like to just come home and get under a fuzzy blanket and watch Netflix.
We were really lucky compared to the rest of the country with our industry to have, I'd say, more opportunities with some financial directly related to tourism. However, we did not go into business to fill out grant applications. I'm not an NGO, and it's not why I went into business. So we all got grant and financial fatigue and just said, screw it after a while. So there's missed opportunities. You really kind of read through the guidelines and went, okay, how much time do I actually have to do this? And yes, I'm going to get more money, but is it worth my sanity? About halfway through the pandemic, many of us were just like, really kind of going through and going, okay, what do I really need to take advantage of? And then the paper trail was enough to kill you. You know, you're dying already, but you really had to just put everything out there. And we're not really that kind of people to put everything out there.
I think for me is to continue to see collaborative efforts in the Yukon between businesses and government, whatever it is, to help grow, sustain, enable people to start businesses if they want to. I think it's Whitehorse, the Yukon in general, is such a great place to start a business as an entrepreneur, as a business person. I think there's a lot of opportunity. So I'd love to see that continue to grow through places like North Lake, the Innovation Center, and Yukon Struct, different things like that. It seemed like a great catalyst to sort of start people on their entrepreneurial journey. And I hope people continue to buy local.
The most helpful is when an employee is sick and they have to go home. and you're forced to go. Like they might have allergies, and you know that every year that they have allergies, but now it says if they have a sniffle, you got to stay home. And that's frustrating when we have single parents working for us. We've got families that are struggling to pay their bills, and they're coming up, and it's hard for us to say, you cannot come to work. We're not allowed to have you there. So having that support to say you can stay home and there's a wage that we can apply for, it was really the most support that we could offer them, and in a way that it wasn't just all on us to try to come up with a solution. The government had that program to say, hey, we understand we're putting these mandates in, but we've got this relief program that we can help families stay home. So that was, I think, the number one for sure.
Without those supports, and the support, the business relief support that came, I believe that was the first round, and I actually sat with the group on the Business Advisory Council as well. And I gotta say, I applaud Justin Furby and his team at Economic Development. They turned that relief around pretty darn quick and got that out to folks that really appreciated and needed that support to get through. As we move further into the pandemic, we did access the sick leave that was there, and I believe that's actually still available until September of this year for folks. Not directly because we had somebody on our teams that was affected with COVID, but because we might have had somebody on our team that their roommate was affected with COVID, and because they had to isolate as well. It was great because, you always worry about your team, and your team has to pay their bills as well.
When you consider what we had to go through here in the Yukon, and also, a lot of the programs that we had from the Department of Economic Development, and some of the supports that they had. They're one of the first programs they had was the $30,000 a month, up to $30,000 a month grants for basic operating expenses, rents, and things like that if you were shut down. Then they introduced 14-day paid sick leave for any staff that were sick that didn't have any sick days left. These were great programs, and I realize, for some folks, that's it helps. It's not enough, and certainly recognize that. But when you look in some of the other jurisdictions, they don't have that level of support. So between that and also, again, between having a bit of an insulated economy, that I think we fared a lot better than anyone else.
Our tourism department at YFNCT really helps and supported Yukon Indigenous businesses during this time. And there's about 12 businesses here in the Yukon. Some have been running for 20 years. Some are they just started, or they were supposed to launch during the pandemic. And our team there at YFNCT, they're just so we were totally tapped into all the funding, making sure that all the businesses got the information, so there was no gaps, because that information was always shared, and YFNCT was always the conduit, making sure that they had all the information needed for support. But we were always so optimistic, and you look at different parts of Canada, and it's because it did, the growth of Indigenous tourism in Canada, and some businesses did definitely, this pandemic was not good for them. But I think in the Yukon, and this is my perspective, just based on my observations, is some of our businesses really flourished because they were able to create professional tourism websites. They were able to get access funding through ITAC, Yukon government. The Elevate program, which is a partnership between Taya, Yukon, and the wilderness, like there's a partnership there where they joined together to support all Yukon tourism businesses. So I think from the perspective of what I saw, the businesses here really took advantage of that funding so that they can like expand their business or expand their business in marketing or social media. So that was really cool to see.
Definitely people are cautious and scared, right? Like yesterday, I advertised like contactless delivery, which is really hard for me because normally I like to chat and visit with the people that I'm selling it to. That's especially a fun part of it, especially when I mostly sell wholesale in Whitehorse, so to be able to be here and connect with people. But anyway, so running around and just dropping on people's porches and their mailboxes. Yesterday seeing so many homes that have hearts and windows, that have lovely little signs. There was one in Takimi that said, thank you so much for coming to our house and delivering. Please set your parcel there. And it was like, we love you and thank you. And like, it was just super sweet. And their window was all decorated, everybody is just really coming together during this time. And people are really trying to support local. Like, I know that there are people that definitely normally buy my stuff, but maybe not as much. And I know because people are amazing on social media these days, people are giving shout outs and really amplifying the Yukon businesses that they're supporting.
Well, as a small business, as a local business, as someone who has invested my life, our family, our friends, we promote and support so many other businesses on our tours every day. We make it a reality tour where if someone needs to go to the washroom or is thirsty, I stop at that little ma and pa shop on the corner. I stop at the little place and go, oh, hey, guys, we're ahead of schedule. Let's stop here and do a little 5-minute. And if you're going to use the washroom, you need to go buy something. But great people, great, and you have a chance to promote. And what I want to see come out of this is, well, small business survive, that started here, that decided to be here, but also other Yukoners really stepping up to know which businesses those are and support them in their new adventure.
I just kind of started to evaluate how could I expand on what we already do but make it happen without having to have my hands on the client. A big part of our business too, aside from the building revenue part of it, is I feel like our business is really about building relationships with clients and building relationships with people. So I wanted to figure out how can I maintain and build those relationships without being able to see them in my service settings. So I started doing a lot of presentations online, connecting with the customers online. It was really well received, so it just kind of grew from there.
That bridge really between Yukon First Nation governments and the initiatives of the territorial government, and how do we think of health initiatives that are coming out, think of all of the I don't know, there's so many initiatives that are being pushed forward, research initiatives, education initiatives that are coming forward that need the middle piece. How do we get from YG in their silo, First Nation governments in their jurisdictions, how do we get to building these pieces together? And I really feel like that's where my zone of genius is, or my creative brain really thrives, is seeing the potential for working together or creating structures, systems that pull together all of the resources, people, money, infrastructure, and use that in a more efficient and effective way. Serving Yukoners' needs. Because it doesn't have to be done separately. I think we can do it better together.
one of the things that I've had a difficult time with personally is, you know, I've got this little like hand sanitizing station at the entrance to the store, and there's a pleasant little sign that says please sanitize before entering, and the number of people who I see walk straight past it like as if they don't see the hand sanitizer. I think we're all pretty used to figuring out where it is in every establishment that we visit, and when people walk right past it and don't use it, I feel disrespected. I feel like now I'm in a position where I have to police people's behavior, and I have to tell them you can't touch the products until you sanitize your hands. And it's a really socially uncomfortable situation to be in, because I don't want to be policing people, and I don't want to be treating adults like they're children. You know, and so that's a really delicate thing to try and maintain, because the products that I have in my store, they're textiles. I can't sanitize them, you know, and now that our borders are open, I'm having to be really careful with people and, you know, just be really gentle and firm. And it's a delicate balance, especially as the week wears on or the day wears on. And I've reminded people all day long, like, it would just be nice if people accepted what the restrictions are and followed them. So that's really difficult. Another thing is, you know, when I first had to hang the big plexiglass shield in front of my my counter, I find that it's an incredibly awkward barrier socially. I understand what it's there for, and I believe that it's going to do its job, but it's really difficult to connect with people when you're looking at them through a glass screen.
It's hard up here. We don't have the access to materials, and you know, I think customers are generally, they want to have, you know, they want to have the homes that they want, and they want to be able to afford that. And with the changing climate, you know, interest rates are going up, and availability of product is going up, and the demand is going up. It just, since the pandemic, it's just seemed like there's twice as many, if not 3 times as many jobs than there are companies and carpenters. And so it's just a major amount of pressure with a lot of roadblocks that have been put in the last few years, that I think it's hard to navigate through that. It's hard to see, to talk to customers, and they're like, I've called people for 3 years and not one carpenter even showed up. And then I show up, and I know that I'm not going to be able to help them because my schedule is super busy, and it's like, we need to be able to address this somehow. But at least there, I mean, yeah, I mean, I think that the customers are just, some of them are really frustrated about the access to carpenters, the access to labor and access to materials, for sure.
I think these days people are really seeing the value of being able to produce food locally. I think, you know, the pandemic included, but also things like the BC flooding and just in general, the erratic behavior of our climate, being able to produce food in year-round situations, or just being able to produce your own food to add an extra layer of diversity in where your product comes from. And I think that's starting to become really important to people, and they're starting to see why they should support that in all levels of, you know, people from just like people who go to the grocery store to buy stuff up to, you know, actual businesses and you know, development corps and stuff like that. So I think that it's exciting, and the path forward is being more clear, I think, for us with people understanding the importance of local food production.
Travel restrictions have been a big impact on our business. Yes, we can use Zoom, Skype, those kinds of things, but when you're dealing with elders and seniors, which is part of our business too, most of them are uncomfortable doing that, or they don't know how. And it's not just elders and seniors. We've actually had younger people not be aware of how to use Zoom. They're not even on the internet. Usually we talk to them in person or on the phone, like they don't have an email. And that is a problem, probably for the North, more so, I guess, because people have chosen to live that way up here. So then for taxes, they have to get all that stuff in the mail and send it to us. And that has really slowed the process down. And so instead of like having a big rush on tax season, the season goes way longer. It's wearing on the people that do bookkeeping and taxes and fill out all the forms, and it's starting to wear on them.
I mean, one of the things that struck me was as soon as we started sheltering in place, it struck me there's opportunity here, right? There's, and that might seem callous to say, right? But all that I mean by that is things are changing. The way that we operate is changing. The ways that we have conducted our daily lives, the technologies that we use, the way we get around, these things have to change because our world has changed. And there is opportunity that comes with that change.
A pandemic is a good time to start a business. Similarly, recessions. If you can make your business work in the middle of a pandemic or in a recession, then your business is probably going to do really well outside of a recession or a pandemic. So go for it. Do it. And find people who can ask you the questions that you're not even thinking to ask, like a business counselor.
When something like this happens, when you have to be so laser focused to continue your staying on the right path to stay sustainable, because there's a lot of businesses that won't necessarily make it through. So it's just sort of always continuing to reevaluate sort of our processes and how we're approaching different things and making sure we are part of the community in a way that helps us to continue and helps us to sustain is going to continue to be important. With COVID or pandemic, whether that continues to be or not, I think that's really important, is sort of taking the things we've learned in the last few months and continue to implement those sort of in a very focused way.
One of the things that's really important is partnership and collaboration. As you're stronger with more, I think. And, say for an example, if you and I decided we wanted to collab on something, and but I didn't know how to do something, but you did, and vice versa. We become stronger as a team, and we're more open, to be able to adjust and do more things. So I think partnership is a huge strength and benefit, in people who are starting off. Like, you're never completely alone. There's always somebody that can help you, and there's always somebody that you can help as well.
It's as much about changing a mindset as changing the processes, and it's the same whether it's, that digitization or whether it's customer service. It's about mindset. It's how are you thinking about your organization? How are you thinking about your company? And therefore, how do I do things in a more efficient and effective way? And maybe that's going to be quite different from how I used to do it. And that's hard. Change is hard for people. And nobody likes change. I like to have my cup of coffee in the morning in the way that I like it. I don't want to have to change to have, I don't want a hazelnut syrup in it or something, but I know a lot of people do like that. So we get used to doing things in a certain way, and it's hard to change. But and then this is another, a bit of a key capacity building, which is, entrepreneurs are actually naturally good at change because they are trying to shake things up often. They're trying to do things differently. They're trying a new market, product, service, or just tackling it in a different way. So entrepreneurs are naturally good at change, but then you can hit a point where things are not working as well as they could be, or your business grows to a certain size, and then you have to change your mindset.
I'm hopeful that we will really leverage our knowledge economy here. And the fact that we do have a different story to tell. So we see over the past 2-3 years, so since the TRC recommendations came forward, we've seen reconciliation be kind of a buzzword. And really in Yukon, we have the ingredients for the recipe, right? We've got the agreements in place. We've got the fact that our self-governing nations have really been at the forefront of building their own nations and know what it is that self-government looks like, and the expectations of the relationship of a territorial government. And how do we build that together and demonstrate that potential to the rest of Canada? And I really think that's where we will lead the way. So whether it's on the Institute for Indigenous Self-Determination or creating a health authority that maybe it's not a standalone health authority, maybe it's a joint health authority that looks at integrating the Indigenous pedagogy, Indigenous ways of knowing and doing and being into a health system that's more holistic, that looks at preventative care and the entire life cycle of building healthy youth, to build healthy adults, to build healthy caregivers, and then healthy elders. So how do we look at that whole perspective and look at it in an Indigenous way of being and present that as this is what reconciliation looks like to the rest of Canada and globally?